Welcome, everybody. So I'm assuming we're going to have folks continuing to make their way in. If you've just joined and you want to introduce yourself in the chat, we'd love to have you do that. Um, and I have Kat Violet here, who's the Moving Maine coordinator and my co-pilot on this session. So Kat will be letting people in, and if you're having any technical issues, you can communicate in the chat. We have just a couple pieces of housekeeping that we do. We try to make every effort to have our sessions be accessible and inclusive, and so we'll try to verbalize as much as we can of what's being shown on the screen. And if you need something to get repeated, feel free to ask for it. Once we get into the presentation, we ask that people refrain from doing much chatting because that can be distracting for folks, and especially anybody who's using a screen reader. So we are going to start off with just a little bit of information about the Moving Maine Network and what we have planned for today. And so I have a few slides that I will share for that. And I did send them out in advance, and I think, yeah, I think most of you should have received those. So, we are really excited today to talk about a week in the life of Maine's most rural mobility manager, Lisa Smith, and just thrilled to have her share about her work. I think that she is somebody who really does an incredible job of emphasizing the big picture and direct service role that mobility managers play. So happy to have her here today to talk about her work. This is our first mobility learning community session for 2025. We'll be doing these every other month through the year. If you have a topic that you would like to see us cover, or if you have something you want to share, let us know. You can send an email to me. And I want to talk just a little bit about the work of Moving Maine in case folks are not familiar. So we really see ourselves as a movement organization, and that together we're working towards a transportation system that works well for everybody. And so, so we envision a Maine where all people have access to transportation, no matter where you live, no matter what your background is, no matter what you're seeking transportation for. And our role is to offer a forum for learning, connection, and action. And so these learning communities are a big part of how we do that. And we really, when we say we mean you. We mean everybody who's here at the table, that's part of these conversations. And that it's really important for our network that we bring together people who have lived experience with using transportation services, with experiencing barriers with transportation, and folks who are really working closely with people who experience barriers. And we believe that when we bring all of your voices into decision making, we'll have a better system for everybody. So we advance rides to opportunity and community. And, so the icon on this slide is a bus, but it could easily also be a car that one of your neighbors is driving. We know that the rides are going to look different in different parts of the state, but they're needed everywhere. I often say, one of the reasons why it's so great actually to have Lisa here is that people will say, oh, well, we don't have public transportation in rural Maine. And actually we do. And Lisa's going to talk about it today. We also work to advance safe, accessible streets and roads. We know many people are not drivers, and they are out getting around on their feet or on wheels, and they need safe places to move around. And ultimately, most of us spend at least some of our time outside of vehicles getting around. And we work to advance the policies and practices that can benefit the most people and improve mobility. the goals for these sessions are first and foremost to build relationships and to cultivate community. So we are excited today to introduce something that we're calling carpool conversations. I don't think I've ever participated in a carpool where I didn't get to have a fun and interesting conversation and make new friends. So we want to bring that energy to these sessions. So we will be doing breakout rooms in a bit. We also are looking to, with these sessions to share expertise. And so whether that is peer-to-peer within the session from the presenter or, folks from within the state, folks from out of state. So we all do all of that in service of moving to action on transportation solutions. So one of the things that I love to hear is that somebody met somebody, was inspired from someone that they met through one of our learning community sessions into taking an action in their community. So our agenda for today, obviously we've jumped into the welcome and housekeeping. We'll have the presentation by Lisa, and then there'll be time for question and answer. So while Lisa is presenting, I would encourage you to make a mental note or jot down questions that you'd like to ask. Again, we would prefer people don't do a lot of chatting during the presentation, but there'll be ample time to have a conversation with Lisa. Then we'll spend some time doing the breakout rooms, the carpool conversations, and then we'll wrap up with a discussion of what is on the horizon for the work of Moving Maine and mobility and access in Maine. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Lisa. But first, I wanted to just tell you a little bit about who she is, because I think it's well, I've gotten to know Lisa a bit. It's been pretty fun. She recently actually joined the board of the Moving Maine Network, and Lisa is a lifelong resident of Aroostook County. And she's currently, as you probably guessed, she's serving as a mobility manager. So she works for Aroostook Regional Transportation System, Inc., which is known locally as ARTS. And so that's public transportation in the county, but it's kind of underknown. In her role as mobility manager, she works to identify and overcome the barriers that she encounters. It's a vast geographic area that folks are living in Aroostook County. And so she finds, that by working closely with partner organizations and agencies that she's able to build relationships and strategize to address barriers. She has her bachelor's degree in business from University of Maine at Presque Isle and has worked for over 10 years in nonprofits. I think really the care and the heart that she brings to this work really will shine through in her presentation. So I'm just really pleased to have Lisa here today. So I will turn it over to you, Lisa, and you can take it away.
Thank you, Zoe. Good afternoon to everyone. I started my position with ARTS about 3.5 years ago, and I was hired for a position that was new to us here at ARTS, but also I believe one of the newer positions of mobility manager within the state even is something that I jumped into. And when I started at ARTS, the first thing that my executive director told me to do is do transportation inventory. And the reason why is if you don't know what's out there, you don't know what resources to share, and you also don't know what the challenges are, or if there's any kind of gap in transportation, or even overlapping of resources. Our resources are incredibly limited here in this area, so if there are overlaps, we do our best to make sure that that we don't start a new program or that we don't participate in something that's already being done by someone else. So we look to focus on different things at that time. To do the transportation inventory, I suggest to anyone, you pick up your local phone book or go to Google and find out all the different organizations within your area. In Aroostook County, we cover 6,600 square miles. So that's an expansive area, but it's very, very rural. The challenges of people having any kind of public transportation are, we find that people don't know what arts is. And secondly, people do not know that public transportation is for everybody. One of the best ways to get that information out there, I found, was to go to events, even if it's networking with a group that you might not ever partner with, or you might not have anything to do with what their organization does. You want to share resources and you want to share that information. Networking has been a huge part of the success here at Arts. We've started our own cancer transportation grant, and with that money from Maine Cancer Foundation, we're able to provide transportation or mileage reimbursement to a lot of our citizens who are currently traveling extensive distances, sometimes to Boston, to get treatment. The cost of owning a vehicle here in Maine has gone up astronomically since COVID. And so with the average price being around $50,000, a lot of our older population has been unable to either afford to maintain a car or also afford to replace a car that they have that is no longer in service condition. So what we try to do with that fund is the money goes specifically to individuals who do not already have another means of funding, because again, we don't want to overlap services. In meeting with those folks who are out in the community, it's challenging sometimes to show up where you're not necessarily invited, and then to expect people to hear what it is you have to offer, and just even to keep asking the questions like, what is it you're doing? What is it that those in your community are saying? So part of that is customer feedback and community feedback. And sometimes it puts me in a situation where I'm reaching out, even though somebody isn't reaching out to us directly. An example of that is our workforce transportation program. That is a program that we worked on with Brian Neal, and we created a workforce pilot program. Originally, the pilot program was going to have about 20 different locations and schedules where we would pick individuals up and bring those folks to work and then bring them back. During the first month of that program, we did not have anybody riding and using the service. When we stopped and considered what the reasons are that this free source of transportation to work, which most would think, okay, that bus is going to be full of people because who doesn't want a free ride and to work? Well, the problem was with that, the schedule did not accommodate folks. And then it was also getting to that pickup location was a challenge. Some folks would have to either, at that time, they said that they would have to have, if they were a one-car household, they would have to tie up the family car just to get to those 3 miles and then leave the car there for the day, leaving their partner or whomever is in their family, leaving them without a vehicle for the day. It happens to be at 4 o'clock in the morning when our driver's picking people up from that central location. If the sidewalks are not clear, if they're not plowed, then you have somebody winding up with wet boots, cold feet, and it makes it challenging to work your shift. So we decided to pivot from that model, and we started having passengers call and sign up. It's now a door-to-door service. The benefit of getting that feedback from individuals was that we were able to, in 1 month's time, be able to add 59 passengers to our workforce transportation, which in doing so, we were able to provide almost 1,300 trips to work or from work. We've had employers say that without this program and without the change that was made, they would have employees that had to be let go, or employees that were constantly calling in saying, I don't have transportation, I can't get there. And then the employer would have to cover that shift. So urging people to reach out. with what the challenges are. There was a time when there was a woman who posted in one of our community resource groups that she had no idea what she was going to do because her car needed repairs. It was going to take her 3 weeks to save up for those repairs. And she obviously needed to continue going to work just so that she could pay for the cost of those repairs. And the distance to her work was about 15 miles, but she didn't have a family member or neighbor that could get her there. And one of the challenges we have here in Aroostook County is the local taxi services have decided that they were going to do motive care, non-emergency medical transportation, rather than do individual passengers with citizens reaching out to them. The reason for that is there's a contract and they get paid a lot more to take those motive care passengers than if they're waiting half the day for somebody to call needing a ride to work. So I encourage everyone to keep your eyes and ears open in a position like this. You don't know what you're going to see on social media. You don't know what you're going to hear at one of the community events that you participate with or a networking group. And ultimately, we all know one person who has transportation challenges. It might be to medical care, it may be to employment, it may be to school. So the goal of a mobility manager is big picture, take care of groups and try to find solutions for those groups. We had the dean of Northern Maine Community College reach out to us and said, we have students that live on campus without taxi service. They have no way to go 3 miles to get their essential needs and to get to the grocery store, even go to the mall and hang out for a little bit. Students are apprehensive, just like new passengers are of any age, as to what to expect. They're afraid when they call and schedule a bus ride or when they use the service, they don't know what to do. They're going to look dumb. How do they know what they're supposed to be doing? How do they know when it works? So in this situation, we did a travel training for the students that lived at the dorms that were interested. We brought a bus there. We told them how it would work when they call. You're going to give us a call. There's going to be a lady at this time on the other end of the line who's going to take your information. You will give your schedule or that you want to be picked up. The bus is going to pull up. You'll have, this is the cost of the ride. You can either use a ticket, you can pay cash. Then when you're finished at your first location, you call us, we'll come back and pick you up. So it's a lot of normalizing and making people comfortable with public transportation, that they have a stereotype that it's just for old people or it's just for individuals with disabilities. And we want to definitely overcome that and to erase that stigma within the county and within the communities that public transportation is only for a select group of people. It's for everybody. And so another one of the big things that I focus on is community, trying to make a difference in the community and just showing up. With arts, what we've decided to do, we knew a lot of our customers that we transport, they only get to essential services once a week due to the bus schedules. There's little time for socialization when they need to get to medical appointments and when they need to do errands. That doesn't leave a whole lot of time for them to do anything extra. So we worked with businesses in our community to get funding, and they supported our cause. We had what we call a senior harvest ball, and it was set up for seniors within Aroostook County. It was a free event. We had food, we had a DJ there, there was lots of dancing, we had door prizes, and that opened up a lot of conversations from those outside of the arts community with our folks who weren't already our passengers, to see that it's not just we want to pick you up, we want to take you where you need to go, but it was we want to get to know you, we want to know your challenges. And so those are things as a mobility manager that you really get the freedom to do. How you put yourself in the community is entirely up to you. It can be going to back to school events like the one we have here in Aroostook County, where there are 3,000 individuals who attend. So these are young families, these are stay-at-home moms, and it's a great opportunity to share all of that information to a completely different demographic by being at a event similar to that. I encourage creativity, thinking outside the box. Always ask the questions. We don't know what we don't know. And so I also recommend that you share as many resources from other organizations as well as from your own, because you're going to be a trusted source in the community. So if you can bring information about the free tax program, there's so many that would benefit from that. It's not arts that provides that program. However, call us and we can get you there. It's providing information on hotels that offer medical rates for folks that are traveling to Boston or even to Southern Maine for any kind of medical appointment, and the cost of just paying for a room is too much. So it's great that we can give them information about, rooms that can save them money, and as well as other resources along the way as well. We try to be very creative. We had a gentleman who called and he needed to get to the airport to utilize PALS. However, he had no way to get that short distance. So we were able to have our driver reserve a certain amount of time that day, just to change her lunch just a little bit, so that we could get that gentleman to the airport in time for PALS to take him to his appointment. And then later on in the day, the passenger gave us a call and we were able to help meet the PALS flight there at the airport for his return trip and bring him home. So although it seems like as a mobility manager, you want to help a huge group of people rather than just one, sometimes it's making that impact on one person that changes transportation for everyone, because it then becomes a conversation. So I would say that my absolute favorite part is just kind of like learning what's out there, learning what the problems are, learning ways that we can help. I recently spoke with one of the caseworkers at one of the local healthcare crisis centers. And her challenge was, she said her patients have non-emergent medical transportation coverage through their insurance. However, when the non-emergent medical transportation provider, when those individuals called, they said, no, we can't transport you because you are living in a crisis center. And the reason why is they wanted the manager of that facility to say that the passengers would be safe, that there would be no issues. And even though the manager has confidence in that, it shouldn't be part of the transportation benefit that they have. So it's working together to bring attention to issues like that, because the biggest part of mental health care treatment is obviously having access to resources, your primary care doctor for medication. And so our temporary workaround was telling that caseworker to have the patient call the non-emergent medical transportation provider, call them, give the pickup and drop off address, but don't specify what the facility name is. And then they can request ARTS as their medical provider, because we contract under that non-emergent medical transportation provider. So that workaround for now has worked, but it's something that is also going on statewide. So there's more work in place, and hopefully change will come statewide, that this provider will have to take people and not be able to say, no, because you're living in a crisis center, we don't feel like you're a safe passenger. So it's those things there that you hear, those conversations where maybe even at this point, the transportation provider would not have allowed them to use the bus, but knowing that's going on and knowing that that is something that seems like it would be illegal and probably needs to be a conversation that's had. It's giving you that information and that ability to be able to bring that to the right individuals and to the right like-minded people who are willing to advocate for those in that community as well. I would say efficiency has been a major part of what we do. In networking with another agency, we found out that they had cancer transportation funding, but they were not able to use it up. They still had an excess amount of money there, and their grant cycle is coming to an end. So we worked together and we were able to find a way that we could use our patients that were using the Cancer Transportation Fund. And we would meet their criteria for the other agencies so that that money could be transferred over to us specifically for those patients. So that money didn't have to be returned and not used here in Aroostook County. I think that's just about it. So I'm not sure if anyone has any questions.
Thank you so much, Lisa. That was really informative, and I'd love to open the chat, and also if people just want to put their hand up, if they want to ask the question verbally or if they want to put it into the chat. We have at least 10 minutes to chat with Lisa about her role. And I don't know if there's any brave souls who want to be the first one to ask a question. And it can also be a comment too. So, well, I might start us off by just asking the question of that probably a lot of people are wondering, is how does an organization get to have a mobility manager? Can you talk about how your position is funded?
Of course, my position originally was an MDOT grant, and it was for 2 years. And we have resubmitted for additional funding for another 2 years because we found that we are making a huge impact in Aroostook County, and not just in Aroostook County, but we're making a huge impact. We're sharing resources. People trust arts to be a transportation resource. So even if we can't provide that service, we are the place that they can call to get information about, I'm from Aroostook County or I'm in Aroostook County, what are my transportation options? And if there are no options, who do I reach out to, or how can we make it work so that there is something available for everybody, or at least answers as to why it doesn't exist, if that's not possible.
Thank you, Lisa. And so we have a question from the chat. Is a mobility manager a general term or specific to arts?
I believe it's a general term. I've heard of lots of other mobility managers, not specific to arts. I think, as I just said, in our situation, it made sense for arts to be the home of the mobility manager, because we are the only public transportation provider and we cover Aroostook County and parts of Washington and Penobscot County. So for us, it's specific to arts in the sense of we're a trusted resource when it comes to transportation. But I feel like it could be anywhere. It could be just a community-based position, or it could even be something countywide. In my mind, it could even be, if it wasn't a transportation provider, but just a community group or some kind of advocate group that was just looking for somebody that could just focus on the transportation piece of things.
Great. Yeah. And I would just add on to that, that one of the things that's kind of interesting about it is it's a job role. So it's like a job title, but it's also a whole way of approaching the issue. And so I think Lisa's discussion really emphasizes how, sometimes it is connecting with one individual person and helping them figure out their problems. But there's also this whole piece around seeing the bigger picture and realizing that when this person can't find a ride, there's probably 100 other people or more who can't, and taking on those issues. So there's really kind of like a macro part of it. So I see that there was a hand up, unless it went down. Did I see that somebody had their hand up?
I put my hand up. I'm Bridget.
Oh, go ahead, Bridget. Yeah, and if you want to just introduce yourself briefly before you ask your question.
Sure. I'm Bridget McCabe. I work for a private nonprofit in Southern Maine, GMS. We support adults with disabilities and autism. And I'm curious, The funding that you were talking about came through Maine Department of Transportation grant for the position, but generally speaking, I think we do a lot of work with communities and trying to connect people with community members. It is helpful to have funding, though, to do some organized efforts like creating positions like mobility managers. The grant funding coming through the state, does it come down through the federal government? And given our current political climate, have you heard any news on whether your grants will be cut?
I am going to say that I haven't directly heard that, but I do know that my organization, in the event there isn't grant funding available, that my organization is willing to absorb that cost. I believe the reason why is because I do a lot of legwork for arts as well. With the marketing part of things, it's sharing what's out there in the county, which a huge piece of that is arts. So it's sharing our information, but it's also, I work on a lot of grant funding and looking for other resources, funding resources. And so with us, I believe arts would just absorb that cost, which I'm grateful for because it means they recognize the impact. But I am not sure from the state level or federal level. Zoe, I think you might know a little bit about that.
Yeah, so a couple pieces to this, and this gets at there's another question in the chat about did Maine Department of Transportation give funding for other mobility managers in the state, and is there a list of mobility managers in Maine? So I believe that the way that that Lisa's position is funded is using some of the Federal Transit Administration funds that flow into Maine and then are dispersed out to different agencies and different transportation providers in the state. So Federal Transit Administration, FTA, does allow us to use some of our federal funds to pay for mobility management. It's something that only a few of the organizations in Maine have been doing. One of the challenges is that it does end up being a choice between using the funds to pay for more vehicles and capital improvements or for people. So it's been really exciting to see arts make the decision to use the funds to invest in mobility management, which clearly then leverages additional resources. So that's one of the reasons why Moving Maine is such a proponent of it. Biddeford Saco Old Orchard Beach Transit also has a role similar to Lisa's that they call a mobility coordinator, I believe. But it's doing some of the same work. We are concerned about how Federal Transit Administration will approach these funds going forward, and are waiting. There was supposed to be some more information coming on after February 18th, and then that was postponed. What I've been watching is Transportation for America. That organization has been providing updates on that. The other thing I want to say is that Maine Department of Transportation has been a partner with the Moving Maine Network in exploring how we can bring more mobility management to Maine. And we, again, unfortunately, this is on hold right now, but we did successfully win a federal grant to implement a mobility management hub model starting in York County, with the plan that that would be something we would hope to bring to all parts of the state, which would include a position like Lisa's. We're very hopeful that that funding will still come through, but it's a discretionary grant that was placed on hold. And we're not really sure what the timeline is for that. Let's see. So I see Kelly has a hand up. So we'll go to Kelly and then we'll go back to the chat.
Hi. I really don't have a question for Lisa. It's more to sing the praises of arts. I work at the Aroostook Agency on Aging, and they are a great partner. They help us get we have some volunteers that take advantage of their service to get to our agency to help us in our volunteer program. They help us get some clients to our adult day service program. And our community is just really fortunate to have them as a transportation resource here. And I'm currently working with Arts, I think, on 3 different grants that I'm working on. So they do awesome work. And I'm really happy that we have them in our community.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, and I just love that we have this story of the amazing partnership work that's happening in Aroostook County that really emphasizes that you can improve transportation access in rural places. And so, when people say, oh, well, that's not going to work here, we're too rural, it's like, nope, look at Aroostook County. So there's another question in the chat, and I'm not sure I totally understand it. It says, how does a program like yours, Lisa, exclude those not able to take advantage of your transportation program? Can you refuse rides to some? I don't know if you have a thought on that.
I'm not sure. I know that our general public routes that we offer to anybody that bring individuals from outside communities into primarily our hub communities of Fort Kent, Caribou, Presque Isle, and Holton. Every single community in Aroostook County is served by Arts. And I believe that number is it's available for them 2 times a month, 2 scheduled trips per month. But we also increase and we also add. Recently we had the folks up in Madawaska that come into Presque Isle, and because there's such a need and the capacity is so big for that trip, we've been using 2 buses to do it because there are so many people that want to do, want to be able to come into town on those days. So we decided to expand that. So we've had 2 buses, and then we just purchased a vehicle that now holds 30 passengers to be able to accommodate all those individuals. So I guess it's possible that there are some folks who may be excluded, but we do service every community within Aroostook County.
And Jerry, who asked that question, if we didn't quite answer it, if you want to clarify, please feel free to do that. And I'm just going to go back to the question that Patty had asked in the chat of, is there a list of mobility managers in Maine? And did DOT give funding for other mobility managers? So we don't yet have, to my knowledge, right now, it's really just a few agencies. I believe Western Maine has somebody who does sort of a similar role.
Yeah.
I think there's really currently only a few agencies that have a staff person who's dedicated to that role. And I would say the way that Arts has done it really is kind of the gold standard, where it's not, you don't have to be planning to ride an Arts vehicle or a route to talk to Lisa. Lisa's paying attention to what's going on with access to transportation broadly across the region. And so that's really the model that I think those of us who are, championing this are thinking about. And I will talk a little bit towards the end about a piece of legislation that Moving Maine has been involved with that is about advancing bringing more mobility management to Maine. We see it as an efficient, and it's an investment that a dollar spent on a mobility manager brings something around $20 to $30 to the community, and that's probably an underestimate. So
I see that Kelly just posted about our workforce connector. That program has made a huge impact to the employers in our region, as well as to those trying to either be able to apply for employment, because if you don't have a vehicle or a reliable way to get there, it's hard to take on a job. And so one of the individuals that reached out to us, she has to go to work, but she's a single mom with a young son. And so it was a problem for her because she had to be able to get her little guy to daycare in order for her to continue to work. So although we typically only do, the workforce is just to work and back, we transport this lady on one of our general public vehicles, so that way there we can bring her son. We pick her and her son both up, and she pays the general public fare for him to go to school, which is $3. We drop him off and then we bring her to work, and there's no fee for her because she isn't, we use that workforce transportation grant to cover her costs to work.
Yeah, I think that's a great story of really being person-centered and saying what's going to make this person able to get back to work or to get to work. And so seeing it holistically. So we're going to do a couple more. I wanted to go to the chat and just say Ellen had said we have mobility managers in New Hampshire. So yes, New Hampshire, and shout out to Terry if she's still on here. They in the past couple of years brought on a network of regional mobility managers. There's several other states that do the same. Massachusetts is pursuing doing it. And I think, it really is showing a great impact, and we're hopeful that Federal Transit Administration will continue to support it. But as I think, Lisa's story emphasizes, there's such a value for the community in it that we also think it's something that the state of Maine should consider supporting, and, and local community organizations as well. And so, oh, sorry, Lisa, were you going to say something?
I would say, yes, you're correct in that. And so since people think of arts as a reputable the transportation resource for Aroostook County, one of the things that we share that is community-based, every year there's a local garage and wrecker service here in Aroostook County. They are in Caribou, and every single year for, like, I believe it's been for about the past 20 years, this company offers free tows on New Year's Eve. So if you think you've been drinking too much, if you went somewhere and thought you were going to be the DD, but then you ended up drinking, this local wrecker company will come get you in your vehicle at absolutely no cost and no shame either. And they will bring you and your vehicle home. So transportation wise, that's amazing information for us to be able to share, even though it's not a service we provide. We hope that it gets a few people that are, going to utilize that service, or at least stop and think, you know what, like, if this happens, and I'm just going to reach out to them, because I mean, we all know tows are expensive and finding another way home can be a challenge. So we're happy to share resources like that as well that do affect our entire community.
That's awesome. And so we'll do one last question from the chat that says, I notice an impressive list of drivers on the Arts website. Are they all employees, or do you utilize volunteers as well?
We do have an impressive list of drivers for sure, and I will say they are also impressive drivers, which I absolutely love. We are expanding, so we probably have now 25 drivers, but we'll actually end up with more because we're able to expand our programs and our services. And so we also utilize volunteers. The volunteer pool has gotten to be a little bit more of a challenge, especially after COVID. And during COVID, a lot of the volunteers that we use are seniors, older volunteers. And so some of them stopped volunteering with COVID, and we're finding that recruiting a new generation of volunteers is a little bit more of a challenge. So we're grateful for the volunteers that have stuck with us, and we are trying really hard to grow our volunteer base. And again, that means reaching out to different groups of people than we've typically reached out to. So that's where the community events come into place, to talk to those maybe stay-at-home moms, hey, when the kids are at school, how about an opportunity to let us know if you can drive, and then we can reimburse you mileage. So volunteers are an integral part of what a lot of the organizations within Aroostook County use. And it's just getting to be a little bit harder to recruit them. So we're working really hard to try to make that part of the language, and one of the things that people consider who are a bit of the younger generation.
Thank you, Lisa. And Tracy says, is it weird that this is making me want to move to the county? In all seriousness, amazing resource. Thank you, Lisa, for such a robust presentation. And thank you to Moving Maine Network for providing this space.
Thank you, Tracy. I appreciate that. And if you want to come up, you're welcome to visit and see how long you really want to stay.
Awesome. So we're going to, so thank you so much, Lisa. And so somebody gets to be the lucky person in Lisa's breakout room as we go to this next part. We